Governor Jared Polis says we are seeing a fourth and final wave of coronavirus in our state, and this one is affecting younger people. But not only is the rise in cases alarming, but the state is also seeing an increase in the number of COVID variants. Dr. Dave Hnida is here now to talk a little bit more about this. Dr. Dave, thanks for joining us. You know, this Brazilian variant has been found in our state, right here in Colorado. How is this one different than the other variants, and why is this one so concerning?
Well, I think the biggest concern we have is really what we don't know about it. There's a lot of unknowns. And what we do know does have us a little bit concerned. In fact, it's making us a little bit jittery. We do know that it is more contagious than the other strain, or the so-called original strain of COVID that was hanging around for the past 1 year. We also know that people who have been previously infected with COVID really have no immunity, no protection against this variant strain. And then we always worry about just how effective the vaccines are going to be. Each week, there becomes an increasing risk that the vaccines will become less effective against things like the Brazilian variant, as well as the other variants. In fact, when you take a look at variants in the United States, as well as Colorado, they make up the majority of cases of COVID. In other words, we are seeing variants that are now dominating the illnesses that are taking place in Colorado as well as around the country. And in particular, what's going on with this is these are more serious infections. They are infections that are being spread more readily, as well as the fact that we are seeing it in younger and younger people. And right now, the majority of hospitalizations in Colorado are actually happening in people who are under the age of 50. You know, I've had folks who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who are coming into the ER or being hospitalized. So it is a big concern. I know everybody's going, well, you know, things are getting better. We can relax a little bit. We got the All-Star game coming, but yet we still are in a race to the finish line here. And it is something that I think we really do need to just kind of keep in our minds that we're not quite done yet. And we really do need to get through this so-called fourth wave.
You mentioned those vaccines. Centura Health has actually decided to stop offering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at its mass vaccination sites here in Colorado. And they made that decision after 11 people recently got sick after getting the shot just last week. So our question to you is there a reason to avoid the J&J shot altogether?
Not at all. I think when you take a look at what happened at the mass vaccination site, you know, you had some folks who had some, actually, they were really minor side effects. But it was really smart on the part of the people who organized the vaccinations to just halt the vaccinations that day. We want to make sure, because this is a new vaccine, that there's nothing wrong with the particular batch of vaccinations that you're giving that day. So they stop and they make sure the batch is okay. They report it to the CDC, and as it turns out, there really are no problems with the vaccine that was being used on that particular day. In fact, that vaccine is not going to be discarded. It's going to be given at other sites and clinics around the state. And so on the one hand, it was a precaution and it was a wise one, but it turns out there's not a big problem with it. And then you go to the second thing, and that is people who are having these side effects. And these are side effects that you really almost expect to see. If you look at the vast number of folks who were vaccinated that day, I mean, we're talking well over 1,000, and the number of side effects took place in 11. It was less than 1% of people who were vaccinated that day. And the side effects that they suffered are side effects that we see with almost any type of vaccination. We see with flu shots, we see with tetanus shots, and that is someone gets a needle put into their arm and there's a reflex that takes place. In medicine, we call it a vasovagal reflex, which sounds kind of fancy and scary, but really what happens is it is something that you can't help. You get a needle put into your arm and you wind up having your blood pressure drop a little bit. You wind up getting lightheaded. You feel a little bit faint. You get a little bit queasy and nauseous. And it is something that really, it does wind up passing. But the advice is if you're going to be vaccinated anywhere, it is a situation where you want to make sure you have food in your system. You want to make sure you have some water or other beverages to drink that day. You want to be seated when you get your vaccination. I think the J&J vaccine is a great one, and in many cases, it really is a preferred one as we race against the variants. Think about it. I mean, this is a one-shot vaccine, and you've got immunity in 2 weeks. So it is the quickest way at this point. I like the vaccine, and if someone offered it to me today, I'd have no hesitation about getting it.
It is amazing what science has done. The last thing we want to ask you about here, it's allergy season. So some people, yeah, we laugh at this because we're all sneezing and coughing, and some people are reporting that their allergies may not even be as bad this year as we've seen in years prior, although it can be a little confusing with COVID kind of complicating things. So how is the pandemic having an impact on allergy season this year?
You know, there's very little good you could say about having this pandemic. It's been horrible. But one thing that has come out of it, because of the social distancing, because of the hygiene, because of masks, we've seen several things take place to a smaller degree. For example, flu in Colorado was really, historically low levels. And the same took place nationwide. We really hardly saw any influenza. And the same seems to be taking place with allergies nationwide and beginning here early in our allergy season in Colorado. And that primarily has to do with masks. We wear masks in order to protect ourselves from viral particles, which are very, very small. But it turns out that masks also protect us from pollens, and pollens are actually bigger particles. They are more easily blocked by masks, and so people will wind up having lesser allergy symptoms if they are masked up. Now, you may say, well, which is the best mask that will help me during allergy season? Well, any mask, an N95 mask, a surgical mask, a homemade mask, typically will be very effective through the allergy season. But when you get down to it, probably the most practical mask to help you during allergy season is the cloth mask, because you can wash it frequently and reuse it frequently. I think that right now we are seeing an uptick in trees. Soon we will be seeing grasses, pollens wind up coming out and affecting us. So, as we continue with using masks, I think we're going to see fewer and fewer people having the severity of allergy symptoms they've maybe had in years past.
Dr. Dave, thank you so much for outlining that for us. I think one thing is for certain, we are all ready for this pandemic to end, of course. Until then, we'll continue to ask all these important questions. Thanks so much. Be sure to check out our next Q&A with Dr. Dave segment coming up on Monday at 11 right here on CBSN Denver. We'll be right back.